So my story today is a real sciency one that comes from a group that has done a few publications in this area. And I know the lead author, Ian Oswald and TJ Martin. So the title of the paper comes from the Journal of, or actually, this has been just released online on ACS Omega. ACS is the American Chemical Society, and the title of the article is "Minor Non-Terpenoid Volatile Compounds Drive the Aroma Differences in Exotic Cannabis." Exotic cannabis, right? As opposed to non-exotic cannabis.
That's
So we all love exotic cannabis, right? So cannabis sativa produces a wide variety of volatile secondary metabolites that contribute to its unique aroma. You know, we all know about terpenes and everyone's been talking about terpenes, but these are non-terpene compounds. So that's what makes these really exciting. So the major volatile constituents include monoterpenes, sesquiterpenes, and their oxygenated derivatives. In particular, the compound beta-myrcene and D-limonene and beta-caryophyllene and terpinolene, these should all be really familiar to the folks in the audience. These are the most common that are found in the greatest amounts of wide variety of cannabis varieties. And while these compounds contribute to the characteristic aroma of cannabis sativa L and may help differentiate varieties on a broad level, their importance in producing specific aromas is not well understood. Here in this paper, in this publication, as part of a few publications from this laboratory, we show that across cannabis sativa L varieties with divergent aromas, terpene expressions remain remarkably similar, indicating their benign contribution to the unique specific sense. So, what is it that makes these varieties different from each other if the terpenes are all still the same? Well, this is exactly the importance of this paper. Instead, they found that many minor non-terpenoid components correlate strongly with the non-prototypical sweet or savory aromas produced in cannabis sativa L. So they used coupling sensory studies to a chemical analysis. They derived correlations between groups of compounds, or in some cases, individual compounds that produce these diverse scents. In particular, and this is really exciting, they've identified new classes of volatile sulfur compounds that contain 3-mercaptahexyl functional groups responsible for the distinct citrus aroma of certain varieties, and another compound called scatol, which is 3-methylindole, which is a degradation product of the amino acid tryptophan, as a key source of chemical aroma in others. They find scatol in the feces of variety of species, I think even in human feces. So here's a compound, right, that really makes shit smell the way it does, and they find it in cannabis. Fascinating, right? Our results provide not only a rich understanding of the chemistry of cannabis sativa L, but also highlight the importance of terpenes in the context of the aroma of cannabis sativa has been overemphasized. And that is the abstract from this very detailed paper. I'm sure we could put a link to the paper. It's available on open access. And that is my story for the High at Nine News. This is Dr. Mark from the great state of Vermont. Interested on what y'all have to think about this.
I guess you can say the
Man, well,
terps don't lie, huh, Dr. Mark?
or they do
Well,
lie.
terpenes have been associated with the aroma of cannabis since the mid 30s. And the first people to identify that was in a group, it's right around the time of World War II in the late 30s and early 40s, in the laboratories of Professor Alexander Todd over in England. When the advent of gas chromatography was first developed in the late 50s and early 60s, a group of Canadians first identified the essential oil of cannabis as being filled with several of the terpenes we just talked about, things like myrcene, limonene, ß-caryophyllene. These are in most varieties of cannabis. The importance of this study is that what they're trying to say is that if you look at the individual varieties or the strains themselves, and they look at a couple different ones in here. I think they look at Jack Herrera. Jack Herrera is typically high in terpinolene, but I think what they find in like what distinguishes that from Trainwreck. I think they also looked at Gorilla Glue, and they also, I wanted to say, there's a sensory panel in the methods in this paper where they took, I think, 7 experienced cannabis smokers and had them also evaluate the strains as well. What they did is they assigned a numerical score to the variety and based it on sort of like an exotic score, if you will. And then they looked at the chemical profile and said, do some of these chemicals, are they responsible for the differences in these strains? And that's basically what they're finding. And some of these compounds are terpene derived, but some of them are not terpene derived. So it's important to realize that not all of the cannabis fragrance that we know and love is solely responsible, or are the terpenes and terpenoids responsible for them. There's a whole variety of fragrant molecules in cannabis, and studies like this are beginning to unlock what those compounds are. This is really exciting for a chemist like me to see this come out into peer-reviewed literature, which again points to making this plant more legitimate because other scientists have looked at this data and they've assessed the importance of this data, that this should be put out on the web immediately so the information could be disseminated in the community and in the world of science. So very important research. Shout out to Ian. I know you're watching. Great work, Ian. Keep up the good stuff.
Yeah.
Dr. Mark, you had the you said something about scat back there.
Scatol. Yeah, so
Scatol.
scatol is 3-methylindole. It smells, I think it actually naturally occurs in passion fruit and some other tropical fruits, but it also is characteristically the smell of shit. Scatol
Yes,
it's found in human feces. It's a degradation product of a natural amino acid called tryptophan. I think I mentioned that. So
yeah.
when
So if
decaying
you're smoking on
flesh,
that,
and feces will have it. Yeah.
Is that
I
why
can
they
dig it. Yeah,
say
so if you're smoking on that, you can actually say, "Yo, my weed is the shit."
exactly? You're smoking the shit.
Yeah. You know, there is a strain called tits, right? This is the shit.
That's
Shout out
right.
to
Shout out to
Ben
Ben.
at
Yeah, Big Ben,
IC
IC Collective. He's getting
Yep.
ready to release product too in the Illinois market. So if you are out there in the great state of Illinois, make sure you check
So
them out.
Jason,
IC Collective.
I wanted my friend Adam, who's got a variety of super skunk. I wanted him to call his variety of super skunk Adam's super skunk, so you can do tits and ass, right? You can get them both.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I see what you did there. I see what you did
And
there.
we're trying to get this accepted by the general population. So,
Yeah,
so
yeah. I mean, of course, that's why we still sell green crack, Dr. T.
I have a question, Dr. Mark. I was
Yes.
surprised to find, because I'd read their previous study on prenolated sulfur or thiols,
Yes.
and
Yes.
how they cause this sort of gassy, fuel-like aroma or
That's
garlicky
right.
aroma of flower, which was great, great work by this group. I am surprised to hear that a sulfur-containing compound was causing a citrus-like aroma. That's what turned
Yeah.
my head as you were talking.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I was, yeah.
It's amazing. So yeah, the compound, the 3-mercaptyl hexyl acetate is actually I think that's again one of these compounds that's found in passion fruit. It's a sulfurous containing compound. So yeah, it has that onion and garlic kind of bite that sometimes you would kind of get out of a haze. I don't know if you guys know that, like that haze kind of like, or the Nige. If you know the Nige definitely has that garlicky, oniony kind of note. But it's really interesting, Dr. T, because what happens is At a higher concentration, it's got that garlicky, oniony thing, but at a lower concentration, it smells citrusy, fruity. So it's the kind of thing where the dose really matters when you're talking about these chemicals, just like with a poison. You know, where you are in the concentration regime will tell you whether or not it's going to give you that oniony, garlicky bite, or it's going to be something a little more fruity and citrusy. But yeah, it's so cool that our nose can do the olfactory spectroscopy and differentiate from really small changes in these molecules. We could differentiate it in our flavor, in our taste, and our sensing. It's just fascinating.
It's amazing the word you just came up with to describe smelling.
Olfactory spectroscopy.
Yes. That was
we know
serious.
and we know so little about how the human nose actually smells.
That's what all the stink is about.
I mean, it works like everything else, Rico. You go in and out just with the air.
Well, there are receptors. There are different types of receptors, but yeah, that gets complex. But what's interesting is that they are G protein coupled receptors, which is similar to the cannabinoid receptors. That might be part of it. And there's also TRP receptors as sensory receptors. Yeah.
That's right. So what Dr. T means is that these compounds are interacting with basically sockets that are already programmed in our bodies. And these are kind of like the plugs going into the socket and turning things on. And you're absolutely right. I think part of the human response, and I think in the paper that Jeremy Plum and Dr. Russo published last year, again, it wasn't just terpenes. It wasn't about terpenes. There's a real human relationship with the taste and the odor of cannabis that we can't put an exotic score on, but there's a real affinity that our noses are able to distinguish and say, hey man, that's not like the last bag of sour diesel I got. That's different. You know, we can tell the difference, and it's fantastic that we can.
I didn't hear them comment on the ester class, and that tends to have the fruity aroma. So I'm surprised.
They tend to be very sweet.
Yeah.
Small volatile esters like that. They talked about anthranilic esters, methyl anthranilomide, and others. These are kind of like the essence of like cherry and banana and some of the more fruitier essences, raspberry and whatnot. Yeah, those are small chain esters, and yeah, there's a whole variety of them. And just by changing the groups on that, you could really influence how the flavor is detected. Yeah, it's really cool.
So the companies that are adding the terpenes in now need to consider potentially adding other compounds like diols and esters to really try to emulate the natural scent and aroma, natural aroma and flavor of cannabis. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not big on the
Dizzy or
companies that
Beat.
are adding botanical terpenes to
Yeah, that just
products
screws
that
everything
are
up. I'm with you. That just screws
Yeah,
it
because
all
as
up.
good as those chemists are, and those chemists are really, really good, they're never going to replace what Mother Nature has had over the time course of evolution to evolve in what's expressed in the terpenes and other compounds that are in the oil of the cannabis plant. I mean, I think what we know is that, and we use the analogy of the orchestra, is like you can listen to the string quartet version of what a full orchestra plays, and it'll never sound the same. Yes, you'll get some of the same notes, so you can take 4 individual terpenes and make some fragrance from it, but you'll never get the full body nature of a real full spectrum cannabis oil, which can only be made biosynthetically in the cannabis plant. The best chemists, and I'm one of the better ones, we can't even come close.
Part of the problem is packaging and storage too. As you're making a pre-roll, you're usually getting attenuated compounds. I mean, the volatile organic compounds are disappearing because you're
right.
using old stuff or it's sort of been sitting around. And so they
That's right.
have
Just
to
like
add these terpenes to try to get it back to normal, but they can't ever do it.
Just like the Glade air freshener, when you first push that Glade air freshener into the wall, it smells just like the flowers on the packaging, right? Come back about a week later and you'll smell a very, very different odor because you've boiled off the more volatile essences, and they just can't give you the time release of the most volatile components are already gone. So you're absolutely right. Yeah,
Not
They're
Well,
fleeting.
I got a quick question. It was like a half a joke, but I got kind of a quick question here. Like, so cherry juice. I have gout, and like cherry juice actually alleviates the pain and inflammation associated with my gout attacks whenever I have a flare up. Would cherry terpenoids infused into a cannabis product, would that be able to help me from a medical point of view? Do you think?
I'm not sure what the active compound is in cherry juice, but it has been known to help with rheumatoid arthritis and maybe gout too. I've heard it more with rheumatoid arthritis than with gout, but I don't think it's the terpenes in the black cherry juice that are the active ingredients. But I can look that up for you to
Well,
see. But
Jean, is colchicine the natural product? Does that
Yeah,
occur in cherry
yeah,
juice?
yeah, that's my emergency shit. Yeah, whenever I have a flare up,
colchicine
pop
is
colchicine.
yeah, colchicine is a gnarly drug, and no, I don't think it's the active ingredient. But I can look it up. But
Yeah,
but
that's my emergency shit. If I ever want to just eat a
yeah,
steak or something, I just pop a colchicine and I know I won't have an attack.
really,
oh
it
boy,
works preventative. Yeah,
oh boy, we
they
need
didn't
to.
want to give you allopurinol.
We
Yeah, I
are
take allopurinol every day.
we are way over
Okay.
time, you guys. We got to get right over
Oh,
to.
whoops.
We have to get right over to Mr. Chris Eggers, who is going to read his
Do it.
story for us real quick. He is a former detective, but now it looks like he's dressed as a U.S. Marshal today, and because he's gone blank on us, that's right. It is Mr. Chris Eggers.
Jason Beck and became Kaiser Soze.
Yes.
Thanks, guys. I'll be really quick. Thanks for having me on this Friday. My headline comes out of SF Gate, written by my guy Lester Black. Humboldt farmers to sue Cairn Initiative from ballot. So a group, essentially, I'll be very brief here because I know we're out of time, but a group in Northern California farmers have sued organizers behind a controversial local ballot initiative that would completely rewrite rules for farmers in Humboldt County. And so I'm going to go into the initiative just briefly, high level. Essentially what it would do, it would limit the size of farms and severely restrict any modifications to existing ones. And it was qualified for in a March, or will be qualified for in a March 2024 election. Local farmers are warning that passing the initiative could destroy the local commercial cannabis industry. Even local county government is warning the initiative would have dire consequences. So this is something to follow for sure. A June report prepared by the Humboldt County Planning and Building Department said that the initiative would make it so hard for farmers to comply with the proposed restrictions that it would quote, the legal market would be rendered not viable in Humboldt County. So this is definitely something to watch. We're going to follow this. I'm probably going to follow up and report on it. And essentially, the lawsuit against this ballot claims that there was issues around how the signatures were gathered in order to get it to the point that it is. So that's my story. Happy Friday. I hope everyone had a great week. Rico, great to see you back in the saddle, buddy. And to my new friends, the two new doctors, pleasure to meet you guys.
Great to be back, Chris. And it's the Karen law, man. Down with the Karens.
Mm-hmm.
I feel bad. I feel bad for women with
That's
the name
right.
Karen. They're actually good people, a little bit.
Because they're caring. They're so caring.
Just
Mm-hmm.
because you're a Karen don't mean you're caring. You know what I'm saying?
I just said they were caring.
It is what it is.
Caring, bro. Caring.
Yeah.
You know,
Yes, it is.
caring.